Welcome back to Breaking Up after a brief summer hiatus, and thanks for listening if it's your first time with the podcast. Just before we start, I want to take a moment to warn you about the content of today's show, which centres on toxic masculinity and incels. I and every guest I've had on the podcast condemn the mentality and behaviour of incels, and we have from very, very early on in production. If you go back and listen to earlier episodes, there's a refrain that goes through them, which is very anti-incel. Nothing in this episode with Eden is intended to excuse or make reasonable the violent actions of hate-filled men that engage in these communities. The content warnings for this episode are around misogyny, suicide and mental health problems, so if these discussions might upset you in any way, I would just give this episode a miss. I'd also like to offer my condolences to all the families and people affected by the violence committed by male perpetrators, and to those affected by the horrific attack committed by the Incel Jake Davidson in Plymouth, which took the lives of 6 people. This episode was recorded a month ago and I hadn't anticipated that the context for its release would be so upsetting. Eden and I hope that this episode is respectful and that it's obvious that we're criticising and denouncing the cultural conditions that allow these groups and communities to thrive. There are a lot of mental health charities that can look after people who are really struggling with some of the sort of symptoms that lead people to these groups. But yeah, thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoy the episode. Welcome to Breaking Up, a podcast about breakups, love and pop culture. I'm your host, Isabella Shields, and this week I'm joined by the artist Eden Dodd. Eden's work centres on the redetermination of masculinity and Welsh identity, mental health and catharsis from trauma, escapism and mythology, and that's why we're talking all about fragile and toxic masculinity. Hello, Eden.
Shabai! Hello, how's it going?
It's going very well. You told me 1 minute ago that Shabai was hi in Welsh.
So S-I-W-M-A-E. Shemai
Aww.
is hello in Welsh, but because you can say hello with like one L if you want to, but like Shemai is nicer and it's like, ooh, it's a different language rather than being like hello, which is just hello with a Welsh accent, which is okay. It's not ideal.
Oh yeah, so like your Welsh is in your practice, embedded in your practice.
Yes, definitely. I mean, like it's hard to not have your kind of heritage embedded in a practice anyway. A big thing in my practice was always not really feeling like I was Welsh enough because I don't speak Welsh.
Okay.
A lot of Wales does speak Welsh. Southeast of Wales, predominantly the Rhondda Valleys, where I'm from, there isn't much Welsh. There is Welsh. Do you know what I mean? People do speak Welsh there. And there are Welsh schools, but there's a lot of English there as an English language. So we speak a combination of it's called Wenglish, which is like a combination of Welsh and English. I know it's like a slang term, but it's very funny and very apt. So yeah, I never really felt Welsh enough. So a lot of my practice, especially after university, was about, like my first time through university when I graduated in 2016, was about trying to understand my Welsh heritage, and it became much more prominent then. It's kind of disappeared a bit now, but I'm working on some other stuff. So
yeah,
going through some other stuff with my identity. So the Welshness is taking the back seat. Yeah, but it's still there.
And that other stuff you're going through with your identity is kind of bound up in masculinity? Or?
It's bound up in masculinity, but also like non-binariness, you know, like I recently came as non-binary 2 months ago, present as femme pretty much all the time. Obviously, not really changed my name, but I'm now known as Eden, when, you know, I was previously known as Ethan, which I think suits me, but I still like Ethan. I still think that's a part of myself. Because when I think of being non-binary, I think of being both at the same time rather than... But I guess it is, I would be more like binary, because I feel like I exist in both of those realms at the same time. So I guess masculinity has always been really interesting to me, mainly because now, through the lens of the fact that I've come out as non-binary, I've been able to kind of recalibrate and put things into perspective in the past. So my anxieties or my insecurities or my misunderstandings of masculinity and my feelings of not belonging to it, and now they now make sense. Yeah. You know?
So like, how was that most felt when you were younger, like in the past? Like, how did you most feel that alienation from masculinity or like your insecurity around it?
Well, I mean, like, I've never really been like a super masculine person. Like, physically, I'm very short, like 5'3", and I'm very thin. And I struggle to, like, last year I was working out a lot in lockdown, and, you know, I did put on a lot of muscle, but I always felt like quite feminine. Even though, like, my voice is quite masculine and I can walk the walk and talk the talk, and, you know, there are aspects of masculinity that I really enjoy. But I think that as a teenager I was feeding into toxic forms of masculinity as a method of fitting into a stereotype or into an expectation of masculinity that I felt, that I knew, that whether I knew was toxic or whether I was aware that it was toxic, that I was subscribing to because I felt like it made me fit in or have a kind of role in my peers who were masculine. Even though now I know that makes sense, because at the time I wasn't truly masculine. I wasn't fully masculine even then, but I didn't have the language to understand or even to kind of place that in myself and myself there in the wider kind of social structure that I was in. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it does make sense.
Okay.
I was wondering if like there are particular stereotypes of Welsh masculinity that you could think of, because I think when I'm thinking of like rugby players,
rugby boys, yeah,
is that what you were kind of surrounded by?
I think so, but I mean, not even that. Like, I was in school, I was in a Catholic school. I mean, when you say Catholic school, like, you automatically think of like the Irish, like mid-century 1800s, early 1900s Catholic schools, which brutal nuns running it, and all that kind of stuff. But the whole thing that I felt was about Catholic school is that Catholic school is, but I'm sure, did you go to Catholic school?
No, I didn't, but I was one of the only Catholics in my school.
Interesting. So I went to Catholic school, but it wasn't Catholic school. Do you know what I mean? Like, we had religious studies, but like no one was really Catholic.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It was just like a teenager. I think that like there's that weird sense of like masculinity that kind of existed in the 2000s to the 2010s, which was like, boys who were obsessed with FIFA.
Yeah.
And like people who like playing football and like, like having a laugh and getting drunk in the park and things like that. There's like this weird form of masculinity, and I mean Welsh. I think that's just a quintessential British masculinity. I don't think there was anything specifically Welsh about it there that I was kind of rubbing up against. But I guess when I got older and started entering into, I guess, my teenage years, like I never really played rugby. My father's really into rugby, and he's like a man's man. I love my father, lots of respect for him. I mean, he's a very important part of my life, a very important person to me. But like rugby I really like, but I've never really been big into it. Like I guess most Welsh people are. But then also when I moved to Cardiff, there wasn't that many people that were into rugby. It was mainly people who were into football, which was really weird for me. And I guess football is kind of this weird catch-all for kind of all forms of kind of masculinity, but I mean it's changing now. I guess what I'm trying to say is there was aspects of Welsh masculinity that weren't really specifically Welsh but they had a Welsh tinge.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was like a British masculinity that I didn't really subscribe to. Boys like sacking each other. You know what sacking is, right? Yeah. Boys doing that to each other and like beating each other up and things like that. Like who's kissing who's drinking underage. Who's smoking, who's doing all this. Like I subscribed to that because I wanted to be accepted, but now I know that I was just like I was doing it because I guess I just wanted to belong. I think a lot of people are like that.
Oh yeah, I think definitely. Like I think as well, like the American high school experience and that kind of thing, alienation and like loneliness is so felt. Like in a way, I think I definitely didn't experience. Like I had a pretty happy teenage time, and I thought I was like a little existentialist philosopher because I read like one book by Sartre, and then I was like, no one gets me.
No one gets me.
Dad, I have so much anomie.
You get like a nice fringe, like the Daria fringe and the glasses.
Literally what happened.
Yes.
And I was really into sports, and I was like a hockey player, and I was in the swimming team, and I was captain of the swimming team when I was in 6th year and all that kind of stuff. But I still in my head was like, nobody gets me. Everyone's playing into these like roles. But I had like a bunch of friends and I spoke to everybody.
I think that's like just a part of being a teenager, is that you feel that existentialism. And I mean, for me, I used to swim a lot when I was younger. I was pretty good at swimming, but I was never really a sporty person. And I became an emo, obviously. Definitely I became an emo. Look at my art, for God's sake. I became an emo. I was like a bit of an outcast. I played a lot of video games, and I did feel a lot of alienation in the sense of like that I didn't really have many friends when I was a teenager. I didn't really care. I didn't really have a best friend until I was like 16, 17.
Yeah.
When I got to college, I just had like acquaintances. And I guess what was really weird for me when I was a teenager was really striking for me was, I was quite young when I was intimate with someone. And for some reason, that made me like suddenly skyrocket socially. As a male, which was really weird for me because all of a sudden, like literally like days before, I was like an outcast. No one liked me, picking on like people were just like, emo, mosher, like, and then all of a sudden, like because I'd being a man, and I became a man very young, I was suddenly like with the cool kids.
Wow.
And all the cool guys were like asking me questions, being like, oh yeah, so what's it like? What's that? What's this? Like, oh, I'm trying to flirting with this girl, and and I was suddenly like this weird, like, it was weird. It was strange.
Yeah, you're like a font of knowledge for.
But it was like, I was so young.
Uh-huh.
Do you know what I mean? How was I a font of knowledge? Do you know what I mean? But like, it was interesting to me as a male, because obviously, if I was a woman and I'd done that same thing, it would be completely different.
Was it with like a woman?
It was with a woman. It was with a woman.
Did you get any of her experience on the other side of that?
No, I didn't, because we were quite young,
Uh-huh.
and it was like a different time. But
and also, it's hard to articulate these things when you're younger as well. Like, it would be difficult
course,
for either of you to
in
say.
the moment, I was like, oh my god, it was like amazing.
Uh-huh.
Like, what was still weird for me then was I was like, this isn't real.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? I was like, these aren't my friends.
Yeah.
It was like just that I was like respected.
Yeah, but did that make the sense of alienation more uneasy?
In a way, yes. Yeah,
because it's like a performance that you now have to put on
of
to
course,
join in.
Of course, and I was still getting like, bullied by people.
Uh-huh.
I was still getting picked on. I was still outcasted. I was still, like people would still like berate me on social media, like Bebo. Do you remember Bebo?
Yes, I do remember.
Bebo, with MSN, and and I started going to town and meeting all these emo kids, and drinking in parks and things like that. And it was just really surreal, I guess. It was, and at that time, when I was younger, I was frequenting. This is why the toxic masculinity thing is really interesting. Is I was frequenting places like 4chan and things like that when I was that young. And when you're that, and lots of people who were alienated would go. It's like shock sites, right?
Uh-huh.
People go on shock sites because they want. It's like when you're a teenager, even if you're like, let's say quote unquote normal teenager, you will see things like that because you're like, oh, it's like, oh, it's messed up, and it's like you want to. I guess when you're a teenager, you just want those kind of experiences.
Yeah,
like
I think
some form of control. It's like I'm controlling myself. I'm seeing something I shouldn't see. It's like I'm smoking underage. It's the same thing, right? It's the same thing. But like, when you're a teenager and you go on those websites like 4chan, things like that, and you see things that you shouldn't, no one should see.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And like, obviously now, like, hasn't affected me, but I think it did affect me at that time.
Yeah.
But I was very lucky in the sense that because I was socially accepted, that I had a claw, I was able to get some friends, and I was able to have relationships. I didn't fall into the incel bracket.
But you think you could have?
I could have, definitely. And I'm not the only one who could have.
No, I don't think you are at all. Like, I think it's kind of more of a clear and present danger than I think a lot of people would think.
People don't realise. And what happens is young men, they're looking for, it's the same way the gangs recruit. But places like 4chan, and websites like, I don't know what it's like, incel.forums right now, which is a cesspit, it's like a snake pit. I do not recommend going there unless you want to be turned off humanity for the rest of your life. Places like 4chan and stuff like that, they subconscious, it's like they don't even, it's like, what's the term? Unconsciously. The website and the people on there unconsciously radicalise people into it. Mm-hmm. Trolling, as we know, is a toxic thing, but people troll and people believe it. I guess the best way to explain it is that if you have no social circle in which to ask questions, in which to play out questions of toxic language, misogyny, homophobia, etc., if you're just on the internet and that's your only social circle, and that social circle is repeating these kind of very toxic narratives, you come to believe them, you come to internalise them.
Yeah, because I think that's everything to do with an echo chamber, really.
Yes.
Especially if it reinforces your own ideas about yourself and about your standing in society, like the way people think about you and the way you think about other people. And I think, if there are thousands of people available, or even hundreds, or even 10 to a post you make, or you see 10 people a post that someone else makes, all of that's reinforced.
Of course it is. It's doom scrolling. That happened I believe doom scrolling is a phenomenon that's existed for decades, and it's mainly because of places like 4chan. So I was doing some research into this for uni. I was trying to do some work about it, but I was trying to get some funding to do a research project about it, do some research journals, because there's a new body of information, a new body of research that's kind of literally happening as we speak. It's now happening, and I think doom scrolling is a thing that has existed since the creation of places like 4chan, because if you haven't got any physical socialization, you're going home, you might have trouble at home, with your parents. You know, you might have like they all have insecurities. You know, anxieties about yourself, etc., about the state of the world. You know, you're staying up late to playing video games because that's your like, you know, that's your like hobby or whatever. You're going online and your only socialization is through this platform. And you're, again, it's an echo chamber, but it is doom scrolling. You're literally going through this website and you're seeing the same things over and over and over and over and over and over.
To the point where they're propaganda.
It's propaganda, you know, like homophobic, misogynistic, racist, you know. Oh, am I tall enough? Am I big enough? You know, am I strong enough?
Yeah.
Am I attractive enough? Like, I'm sure you've heard about like red pills and blue pills and black pills. Yeah, black pills are like these things, this idea that a black pill is something that you have to swallow, which basically makes you aware of the uncomfortable things in life, the things that you can't change, like genetic things. It's really weird.
The red pill is this idea that starts from The Matrix, which was written by two trans women.
Two trans women, exactly, yeah, exactly.
And it's about the characters in The Matrix. You can take the red pill and you can wake up to like the reality of your existence,
the world,
your experience. In this particular world, like Neo, played by the beautiful Keanu Reeves.
Oh my god, what a babe. Me and Mum were talking about
Trinity.
Oh my god, both of them.
Yeah.
I was at home for Christmas. I was at home recently and we watched The Matrix with my baby sister for the first time. And she was watching it and I was like, oh my god, she's watching The Matrix for the first time. And I was like, do you remember when everybody watched The Matrix for the first time? And when you watch The Matrix for the first time, you're like, oh my god, what if?
Yeah.
And my sister was watching it, and I remember her saying to me, she was like, yeah, it's weird because like I've been thinking like, what if we did live in a simulation? And I was just like, yes, this is great. And then me and Mum were talking about how hot Keanu Reeves was, and she was like, I just had a photo, a poster of him on my wall. I was like, yes.
God, do you know, I got in trouble at school because I came in and told people when I watched it on TV when I was in like maybe P3 at school, because of the bit where Neo gets his mouth like totally closed over and the worm goes into his belly.
That bit,
like scorpion thing.
I have a weird phobia of belly buttons,
and that's probably why.
I hate that movie so much.
I got told off for coming and telling people that, and my brother also went as Neo for Halloween about 3 years in a row.
So good. So like,
it's a big film, like it's an impactful film at any age.
Of course, but it also has correlations with what we're talking about.
Yeah, with incels and like this whole kind of
trench coat, but also trench coat mafia.
Yeah. Oh. But yeah, there's this sort of didactic relationship that incels have with The Matrix.
Yeah.
And with the idea that you can take a red pill and wake up to the fact that like you're inferior to some men, but you don't deserve to be. Like you're physically inferior.
You're physically
but
inferior.
Intellectually superior.
Yes.
And that you are superior to all women.
All women, because you're a man.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then the black pill is this idea that it's like something that you take and you can't, like, once you take that, you can't, like, go back. Like, and it's so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. But if you, like, so I did some I used to go on the Incel forums to do some research in January, February. When I was at one of my lowest points in my life, and it was, as in, like, I was in a low place mentally. And I was like, I'm going to make work about this, which did not help. But I was like, I'm going to go on the Incels forums and look at the black pill section. Because I was like, I wonder what this is all about. I wonder what people are posting. And it is literally harrowing. Right. Harrowing. Just like... So
don't look at it. Just hear about it here.
I don't recommend it, but it's like, okay, trigger warning.
Yep.
Suicide. Trigger warning, like, yeah, that kind of vibe. Like, literally, like, people are just, like, talking about how they can't, like, go on. Because they're so, like... troubled by the state of the world. It's like horrendous.
Wow, and that's the state of the world insofar as like they receive it as a red pill taker.
Yes, as in like they will never be anything. It's like really bad. It's like I am genetically inferior to everybody else. Like there's nothing about me that is good. It's really bad.
Christ.
And you see that and you're like, that's crazy. Because these are young, like, look, disclaimer, I do not have any sympathy for incels because at that point they're very far gone.
Yeah.
I have sympathy for the people who become incels at a young age.
Yeah.
Young men are very lost. You go on the internet, you find a group of people that seem to mimic or echo some of your feelings or give, not even echo, they give language and structure to your feelings of insecurity as a teenager. As a teenage man who might not fit the traditional mould of the male. And then over time, you become radicalized and you become entrenched in these circles and you eventually become so radicalized that you may cause harm or, discomfort to people. And I think that I was trying to do this research project because I wanted to highlight the kind of like beginnings and to see if there was ways to kind of like pull people out of that before they get too deep, you know, because masculinity is a mess. I mean, we all know it. Do you mean it's not fit for purpose? It's fit for like claiming and destruction and like conquering of an outside world without an exploration of the self inside. And I get like, you know, loads of like, I know we all say men, everybody go to therapy, all men should go to therapy, but I really think if all men went to therapy, it probably would help them. Because if they can understand themselves on a fundamental level, I feel like lots of men are very incredibly emotional. We only have to look at what happened at the football.
I think it's bizarre to have anyone think otherwise.
Yeah.
Like, I think men are like incredibly sensitive, and if they weren't, things like wouldn't be functional on like a basic human level.
Yes,
and I think toxic masculinity is like the ultimate extent of that.
Yes,
like
completely.
A lot of the ultimate conclusion of like men having to disavow sensitivity.
Yes, exactly.
And I think it's crazy. Like, I think the men in my life are probably like more sensitive to some things than women a lot of the time, and I think part of it is because it has to be so contained.
Yes.
And I think
you have no outlet.
You have no outlet.
No, like for me, now coming out as non-binary, this has been really interesting for me, is that I take time to have self-care.
Yeah.
To have a bath. You know, to like do my hair, to like, you know, put makeup on, like, you know, like exfoliate, you know, all these things that I do that like, so it'd be like, you know, that as a man, I would never do because I was like, I don't need to.
Yeah.
But now I'm like, but I think that's the thing, is that the men think that they don't need to do these things.
But that's almost like saying that men don't have skin.
Yes.
It's absurd.
Yeah, of course it's absurd. But men don't even like function. I think men don't even function on a level of being like, I am in a body. They just function as like a force.
But I think that's why people have such a hard time with their bodies, and like
totally.
a lot of like very violent behaviour is also about like a reclamation of your own body.
Your own body, exactly.
And like the control you can exercise with your body compared to other bodies that you think are harmful to your ego, effectively. And like, I think it's just really interesting talking about that, and like talking about the fact that men don't make time or space for themselves, and like that means that they don't really facilitate any
of course introspection. Exactly. Or like like I have a body. Like I like it's as simple as I think that men just don't Freud, life drive, death drive, Eros Thanatos. I really like those. I think they're a crazy concept, and I love them. And you know, F Freud, ta-ra, see you later. Jog on, mate. You know, you're off. You're terrible. But I do like the idea of the death drive. And I think the men exist in the death drive constantly. They don't exist in the Eros drive. I mean, I think that's why so many men cry when their wife gives birth. Is because for them it's like they've created something that isn't. Maybe I'm projecting or assuming, but I think that idea of creation is really touching to men. You know, when like, you know, if you speak to any father about their child, they gush and gush and gush, and they're so emotional in a way that they probably never were as a young man before they had a child. And I feel like maybe that's why I feel self-destruction is a very common and very visual and like aspect of toxic masculinity, because men are taught to hide their emotions. When they can't hide them anymore, they explode and they like cause, I mean, you know, they're very violent to whoever,
including themselves.
Themselves, exactly. And I think the self-destruction is a very visible form of toxic masculinity for people who can't, because they feel like through their lack of some form of creation of something, a creation of like, for example, a positive identity, meaningful relationships. It could be as simple as like artwork, looking after themselves, you know, like cooking meals, doing things like this.
And also having pets. Because I feel that having pets is like the biggest emotional outlet for a lot of men.
I feel like
experience.
If I see a man who's got a cat, I'm like, yes. You're like, you know boundaries, you know consent.
And also that you can care for something.
Yes,
and I think it's really rewarding to care for something in a way that I think is often underestimated.
Yeah, totally.
And yeah, it's actually been so lovely just when I had Kismet before as well, like seeing how much my dad like responded to Kismet, and like how much like other like men in my life did as well. And and even stopping men on the street, like men stopping me on the street rather, a lot of men stopped to talk to me about like their granddad or their uncles that like raised dogs and all that kind of stuff, and were like, I remember like my aunt had a greyhound, or like, and they would just talk to you for a really long time about their nostalgic things and their masculine relationships. And I thought that was really like kind and overwhelming that they would give me any time at all to talk to me about that. But it seemed like they needed a a point to do that with.
It's like touching. Yeah, totally. They need that pivot. That they like. You just need to like. Literally, it's like a floodgate. You just need to open that floodgate, and it's like the same with boys who are teenagers. Lots of young men who are teenagers who like, and you can see them a mile off. They're very like masculine. They're very like, you know, walk the walk, talk the talk. You know, very like they're playing a character.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time, because I was doing teaching last year, so they teach you how to mental health awareness. You know, as someone who works with a lot of mental health in my own practice, as a I'm going to say male in inverted commas now because I'm not a male, but you know what I mean, as someone who was a male for a long time. And it's really interesting to see with those people is that you just got to get through to them. And as soon as you get through to them, that's it.
Yeah.
And you've got a relationship with them then. You've got to respect. You've got they're just to a point where they can talk about themselves. And sometimes it's like scaling a mountain. But once you get them to talk, that's it. And I think it's just as simple as that. More men, you know, everybody says like more men need to talk, and it's true. It's just true as that.
Yeah.
But talk physically, not online.
Yeah.
Together.
And even then, like, I think one of the other things, I spoke to my dad about this a lot, like I spoke to other men about this, and a thing that a lot of them said was, but you can't just meet up to go for a coffee, you need like a thing to do. So like, you need to go and play golf, you need to like have a reason to, you need to be like going to the cinema. It's very rare that you need to be like, oh, do you want to go hang out in the daytime, do you want to go like...
Go for a walk. Yeah.
They just wouldn't do that.
I still feel weird about that with some men.
Yeah.
Which is strange. Like, even now that I'm not like, but I've always had like more of an affinity with going for coffee with women, inverted commas.
Women with an X.
Women with an X, yeah, exactly. Do you mean? But I've always felt more comfortable with that, and now that I'm much more open with myself, I feel it way more comfortable. But then some of my friends, for example, some of my best friends were boys. Obviously, back in Cardiff, I obviously lived in Cardiff for a long time. Lots of my friends are like straight. Don't really have a queer support structure, but up here everybody I know is queer, which is really strange. It's like as like two sides of the coin. But those people who were like my friends, my best friends in Wales, you know, shout out, love the boys, love the girls, love them. You know, we've known each other so long, and a lot of them we talk very frankly about emotions. You know, but a lot of times because I was living with people that we talk about things very frankly. It's just interesting to think about. You know, like how. Yeah, like you know, you go shopping. You go like it's weird. Yeah. I don't know, it's strange.
I think we just need to hang out more in a more relaxed environment.
Just need to vibe, like just need to chill out. Playing video games is really good.
But then again, that's just something that you're doing to like stop you from talking directly. Like you've got all these like incidental sort of avenues.
You can't just look at each other
and have a chat.
Yeah.
I just think men should do that more to all the men that are listening.
Yeah, totally.
Go and hang
Definitely. Out. Recommendation.
Purposeless hanging out.
Tips, hang out. Do a hangout, please. Like physically hang out. I mean, if you can't and you're unable to hang out with people and talk, you know, talk online late at night, whatever you can talk is really good. But I always recommend just getting like, just out there and just meeting people and having a conversation. And also don't be afraid.
Yeah.
Lots of times I think men are really afraid to be open or to be that first person, you know, to be like, I'm having a hard time. Like, you know, like a lot of, like it's always hidden behind humour. Yeah. Or it's always hidden behind like playing golf or playing video games. It's always hiding behind something. And again, it's the same thing of like when I was saying, you know, you've just got to get through to someone. Yeah. It's so hard to get through to them. Yeah. Sometimes you just need to have that like, you know what I mean? It's strange. Masculinity is such a strange thing.
Yeah, it is. And also one other thing I'd say about that is that like I would try to get to a place where you could talk to people without being drunk.
Yes,
I think
without
I
being
really
under the
with that.
Yeah, or even on any, not just drunk, on anything. Intoxicated.
Yeah, because I think I was kind of a closed book emotionally for like a while. Like I was very like physically emotional when I was a teenager. Like I think it was always very obvious what was going on, but not to me or something like that. Like and then like when I was getting older, like the more I would speak to people, like when I got drunk and I felt more comfortable, would be when I would have like real chats about things with people. But then there was always like a bit of a hangover from like the shame of vulnerability in a way, and then that was obviously sort of exacerbated by alcohol. There's like an actual hangover and then there's a vulnerability hangover.
Yeah, I think you've got to be exactly. It's like, oh god, why did I say that to someone? See, I was the opposite. I would talk too much about what I was going through to the point where people were like, whoa, like why are you talking about this right now? And I'd be like, oh yeah, ha 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 ha, as if it was like a thing of like me, like because I was just talking about it and getting it out of my brain. Like it was like I wasn't holding on to it. So my counsellor last year said about this. she was like, because I was saying about like, oh, I'm afraid of death, which I am. I've always been afraid of death, but you know, it's just human vibe, I guess. And she was just like, oh, you know, the thing is, you always talk about being afraid of death, but you never actually like deal with it. She was like, it's like the sun, you never look at it. She was like, you always just like talk about the sun, but you never look at it. And I was like, oh my God, it's such a beautiful metaphor. But I think that's, for me, was what I was the other way. Now I'm a lot quieter. I'm a lot more like okay with being on my own. But I guess that for me, that was the desire to belong to something. And I wanted to be so emotionally available, emotionally like resonant with everybody around me, and so like sharing is caring with everybody. Everybody was just like, whoa, like stop sharing with me, like respect the fact that I have boundaries and I don't want to hear this right now. And I was like, of course, but for me I was like, I need to tell people because I can't deal with it. Which is interesting.
That's really interesting.
Like, so I guess I've never really been a man, but like, you know, that idea of me being like a male person with like a beard and a mustache and shade, you know what I mean, like masculine in some form, and like oversharing, was that a form of toxic masculinity? Of me putting that out there?
I don't think so. I think it's sort of a reconciliation of, or like some kind of reconciliation that you were going through between like physically presenting as very masculine and wanting to overcome that in some way. But I think like, because there are so few guidelines for how to communicate emotionally, especially when who's like being treated as a man, identifying as male, like, and then people like me on this podcast are like, you just need to share, you just need to talk to people all the time. Totally. Like, it's hard, I think, to recognise like the limitations of that for some people. And like, so the other, like a few weeks ago, I had people around and one person was talking about their mental health so much that people were trying to like, and one of my friends as well had just had a really hard time with mental health and really didn't want to talk about it. Like, it was supposed to be like a night out to be like, woohoo! Like, we're talking about something else, kind of thing. Like,
life's great. Everybody's back, like, woo!
Literally, and then this person just like kept bringing it back to them and like hypotheticals about their mental health, and like it was so hard to just be like, you need to stop, and then we didn't, and like I think it's really interesting trying to find the balance of things. I think maybe just checking in with people during the conversation is probably the best way to go. I
had a conversation on Sunday about that, and someone was like checking in with me and was like, are you okay to talk about this? And I was like, yeah. And I thought I was. Yeah. And then at one point I was like, I'm going to go home. And, you know, they were like, I'm so sorry. And I was like, no, it's not your fault. I should have been more open.
You can also just hit capacity with things that you can think it's okay and then suddenly it's not.
It's like, not exactly.
But then it's just about respecting that, I think. But yeah,
of course, really good.
This is solid advice.
Really solid advice. Yeah, talk about yourself, but not too much.
Yeah.
Find a balance. Yeah, whatever's comfortable with you and people around you.
Yes.
Respect people's boundaries.
Yes,
totally. I think lots more men can listen to respecting more boundaries.
Yes,
and lots of men can also listen to sharing is caring.
Yeah.
Because problem shared is problem halved. Yeah. If you share it with 2 people, that's quartered.
And so it'll be incredibly small.
Yeah, exactly. It'll be incredibly small, and you can go, wow, this problem is like a 24th. That's amazing. I'm not very good at maths. Please ignore my fractions. I'm very bad at them. So yeah, I think that's pretty good. Sorry about that getting really heavy at times, but I think it comes with the territory.
Yeah, totally.
Do you know what I mean?
I think this is for people who have had like a hard time with breakups. They're ready for the heavy content.
They're ready for the heavy stuff. Right, breakups are out, masculine time.
This episode of the podcast is sponsored by Maison Poirier Jewellery. Use the code BREAKINGUP50 to get some lovely jewellery at half price. There are beautiful necklaces, rings, there's loads of stuff. You can see me wearing some on the Instagram shortly. And yeah, if you want to get somebody a gift, if you want to get yourself a gift, then go ahead and head to Maison Poirier Jewellery and use the code BREAKINGUP50. Thanks. Speaking of breakups, will we get back to the questions or forward to the questions?
Go forward, yes please.
So the first one is, my boyfriend keeps making misogynistic jokes and it makes me and my friends uncomfortable. He's a really nice guy otherwise, but then he'll just say something and he says it's ironic about women or men or queer people, even though he's bi, and insisting it's just his humour. Is this worth sticking around for? And if yes, how can I convincingly tell him to stop?
Is he cisgender?
We don't know. It seems like we're using he pronouns.
I'm going to say cisgender bisexual.
Yeah.
I think... Okay. I'm going to say something. No, it's good. It might be challenging, I'm going to say. I think someone who is bisexual and is a male depends on their position. First of all, they top or bottom, right? Because if they top, they might feel like they're still cis mask, and because of that they might be holding on to some very toxic masculine traits.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was a man, in inverted commas, I used to make a joke about the fact that I used to be gay. I was like, oh, I used to be gay, and I'd make a joke, and then the boys would joke about it because they thought it was okay.
Really?
Which isn't okay. But at the time I was like, it's fine, because I was like, it's fine.
I'm assimilating.
Yeah, I'm assimilating, I'm bisexual, But like, I think it depends, first of all, it depends on your circle. I was fine with that. I know it was toxic when I was younger. I know that now, because obviously I haven't come out as a queer person, I understand that. And I'm aware of the fact that. But at the time I was like, as a bisexual person, this is my thing. I can make jokes about this, you know?
Yeah.
But if he was making jokes about men, that's fine, because he's a man. But because he's making jokes about women
and queer people,
it depends on if he believes himself to be a queer person. But I think bisexuality, of course, is a queer thing. It's part of the LGBTQ plus. QI plus now, it's like, so yeah, it's very big now. It's getting longer, and I'm still learning. I think that because it's a part of that space, then people need to respect the fact that queer people are a part of the same space that this person is interacting with. I think you just need to have a frank conversation. Personally, myself, I would just be like, look, sit them down, get them a cup of tea, maybe a biscuit. Don't have a conversation when you're drunk or intoxicated, as we've said already in this podcast. No talks drunk and intoxicated. Because it's a bad vibe, it can go very badly very quickly. Yeah,
especially if he's already said that that's just my sense of humour, you don't get it. If he's drunk, his walls would be like more...
That's defensive. That's like, you're not changing me.
Yeah.
I'm not going to change.
It's fundamental to my personality that I have to be misogynistic and
homophobic. What? Like, yeah. It's a bit like... That's toxic.
I think that is toxic.
That's toxic, yeah.
I think, because it seems, because I was going to say, like, if it's the first time you're bringing it up, saying you're making it, like, it is actually making me really uncomfortable. My friends have brought it up to me as well.
That's, but now that it's, like, with friends as well, like...
Because I think that's always the point where your beliefs about something are confirmed. If your friends are like, I really don't like that either. Yeah. Because I think it's sometimes harder when you really fancy someone as well, when you really like someone, if they're doing this one thing, it might not be this one thing, but that really gets you down. It's easier to look past it than if your friends are like, that needs to stop, I don't like that.
There's a quote from BoJack Horseman, best show on television, where Wanda, who is voiced by Phoebe from Friends, which I love, so Phoebe's my favourite character.
Oh yeah, I think I know the quote.
Yeah, the quote, and she's like, when you look at someone through rose-tinted glasses, all the red flags are just white flags.
Yeah!
And that's so true.
That is so true. That hit me so hard when I heard that
really
as well.
Hard too. That one's really good.
That's a really good season.
Yeah, really good. Yeah.
Because I think that's almost a stupid piece of shit in it as well.
Yeah, stupid piece of shit is later on.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, because that's the one where it's the one with like what do Hollywood stars and what do they know? So let's find out that one. It's when it's when Mr. Peanut Butter is it's when he's doing Secretariat.
Yes.
Which is a good season.
Really good season. I think I made them the same season.
Yeah, but it's all one. It's all one. Yeah, Stupid Piece of Shit is a really good one. That's with his daughter. Well, his daughter.
Yeah.
Won't say anything else.
That's exactly right. Like when you look at someone through rose-tinted glasses, all the flags are green flags. Of course. Like that, I think this is a red flag.
It's a red flag, and also it depends. Another thing that I'm going, as a somewhat a former male, I hate saying that. As someone who was a man for a long time, and still walks around in masculine circles, are his friends the same? Yeah. Because that might be that he is doing that because his friends do it, and that's how he fits in with them. So that's another thing you need to think of. Is it him or is it his friends? Because what he might have done, he might be in his friendship group that like he could be that person. He could have been assimilated and be friends with people because they share common interests. Do you know what I mean? Is his standing as a man related to this? I mean, that's not a good thing, and I'm not condoning that, condemning it. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? I think that's a wrong thing to have. But that's another thing that you might need to think about. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? I hate to be devil's advocate.
But also you can say that the way your friends talk about women makes me uncomfortable.
Of course,
and then you can take the criticism beyond just him, because then if he feels like he's having to do this to get along, and like you alienating him from them is gonna make that more of a problem.
Yeah, that might be a problem.
Or you like separating, like you're pushing him away from you, and if he acts the way you want to, he's getting pushed away from his friends. Like isn't
that's
what
difficult.
he wants to
That's
hear.
difficult, yeah.
And like it puts him in a horrible position, really, but not one that I would find defensible anyway.
No, it's not
a bad position.
It's not defensible at all.
It's not defensible. And I think, so you can even like start by saying like, I've heard your friends talking like this, and like I think that's why you talk about this as well, but I just really don't like it.
Yeah, I really don't like it.
And then also, I think giving him like a bit more agency in it as well, and saying like, if you were ever up for saying to your friends like, it makes my girlfriend uncomfortable.
And her friends.
And her friends uncomfortable.
Because it could be a position where like, I mean, it could be another thing. This could get to a point where like, his friends, like it's his birthday, and he invites her friends and his friends, and one of those groups isn't going to come.
Yeah.
And that's not going to be good. If you're going to be with this person forever, that's not going to be good at the wedding.
No, it's going to be horrible.
If you get married, do you know what I mean? Like, it's going to be horrible. So you need to nip this in the bud.
Yeah.
You know,
and you need to work out if you just want to be around it as well.
Like that's like it's like not even like, forget like the whole trouble at the marriage thing. Like if this isn't like fulfilling you or making you feel good, or like they're your friends. Yeah. They're gonna, they are gonna be with you like maybe longer than Sky is. Yeah. Do you mean?
And I also think like oh my god, I totally forgot what I was gonna say. I was gonna say that I was just wondering if this kind of behaviour bleeds into any other aspects of your relationship.
Yes.
Like if it's manifesting in like him expecting you to do like more sort of traditionally or patriarchally female things, and like if you're picking up slack where he isn't, if there's like, if it affects like your sex life or anything like that, then I think it might just be worth detaching from.
Of course.
Because I think that's too much. I think that's too much for you to like unteach. But I think like you can flag it up and you can just be like, this is why this is happening. Like I don't like this. I don't find this respectful. Yeah. I don't think it's nice.
Of course, completely.
And people can't really argue with you being like, I don't think it's nice.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't feel respected.
That's you know what I mean? Like, because if he's like, and then if he argues, then that's like,
bye. If he's like, actually, it's really nice to call you a bitch. You're like, did you hear what you just said?
It is actually really nice to make like slurs. Great. Cool, you're really cool, mate. Legend.
Really, like,
you're such a legend. You're actually so cool, man. Like, do you want to play like FIFA later or something? That's horrible. I shouldn't say anything like that. FIFA is a very good game for developing relationships between men. Respect. I mean, I don't like it, but whatever. It is what it is. Well, I guess another thing is, it's interesting is that she's mentioned that he's bisexual as well. That's very interesting.
Because I think as well, it's easy to think if someone belongs to a queer identity or like identifies as queer in any way, that they're almost like exempt from behaving harmfully, and I think that's a total myth.
Especially as a bisexual person. Like, it's interesting to be like, why is this bisexual person doing this? Yeah. Like, but then, as I said before, like, I'd make those jokes, so it was like, you have to unlearn those. As a queer person who is cis male, you have to unlearn those things. Yeah. And that's hard to do sometimes, because it makes you uncomfortable, and why would you make yourself uncomfortable? Yeah, but you have to work out what your priority is, making yourself uncomfortable. That's what I'm saying,
I know, I agree.
Yeah, totally.
And I think the other thing that I've just thought sometimes I've actually said when someone's behaving like this is like, why do you want to make me feel like that?
Yeah, why would you?
And then if they have to like think about that for a minute, they're like, well, I don't. And they're like, so why are you doing it?
Why are you doing it? Exactly. Yeah. That's really good. That's really good.
Like, if you tell someone how you feel and then you ask them like why they want to make you feel like that, and they work out that they don't, or like if you work out that you don't want to make someone feel like that, it can feel really like kind of visceral in a way that.
Crawling. Yeah. That's really good, actually. Fair.
But so I think that's our advice there. Work out the extent to which this is affecting your life and your feelings about yourself, and if it seems salvageable, if this is just like one sort of avenue he has for trying to join in with his friends or something like that, and you can approach it carefully in a way that keeps you safe.
Of course. Make sure that you're safe.
Yeah.
Make sure that you're safe.
Then I'd say try and approach it sensitively. Remember that it's hurting your friends as well, and I think people have a harder time arguing with that.
Following the trend of the podcast as well. Coffee. Daytime coffee. Yeah. Safe space. Depends on the person, I guess. Do you want to do it in your house? Do you want to do it in their house? Do you know what I mean? I'd say public space.
Yeah. Do it in a public space so voices can't get raised and everyone can leave.
Yes, and also exactly, and people around. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Don't do it in a park.
Don't do it in a park. The parks are so hard to get out of.
They are.
Do you know what I mean? Like, unless you sit right next to the exit.
I was walking through Queen's Park the other day, like late at night, and I was like, "This park is massive." I was like pitch black, and I was like, "The park's huge." I was like, where am I? It's horrible, honestly. So bad.
Yeah, but I think Just keep yourself safe.
Of course, be
and
safe.
That's what kind of we're talking about in this whole relationship as well. Just keep yourself safe.
Amazing.
So the next question is, I've been really lonely for a long time after the end of my engagement when I was a teenager. I've heard you speak very negatively about incels in the past, and I agree with you, but how am I supposed to speak about loneliness and feeling ugly and being jealous of people in relationships without sounding like one? And how do I get past these things when I'm meeting people?
Okay. This is really interesting because... Perfect. Great question. As someone who has struggled when breaking up with someone for a long time, having a long-term partner who you've done a lot with, who you feel at the time is the person you will be with for the rest of your life, it's not easy at all. It's not easy at all to come out of that situation and be like okay and also be confident in yourself. It's how you manifest that insecurity. How you mask it, because everybody is insecure in some ways, but everybody deals with it in completely different ways. And it's like, first of all, try and combat why you feel insecure. Why are you jealous of people in relationships? Why do you, when you meet people, because I mean, I'm assuming this person is a male, is a man, because of the nature of the conversation. I think that when you meet people, are you ready to meet people? Do you know what I mean? I know you may feel like this has been a long time since your engagement, but time is relative, and emotions and trauma and feelings, they don't just go away, and if you're not combating them, they can fester and they can get bigger and larger and out of proportion. Have you talked to anybody? I would really recommend talking to someone. Talking to people really helped me. Hobbies that aren't related to work, like obviously I'm an artist, so I'm very lucky, and I was able to kind of translate my feelings into artwork. But you know, like things like video games that aren't inherently violent or like competitive, you know, like
Stardew Valley.
Exactly, Stardew Valley, Minecraft, you know, like Pokemon, you know, like things like that. Which, I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's finding time for yourself to be comfortable in your own skin and what you do to do that, you know. Take some time for self-care. Yeah. You know, like go out shopping. Talk to your friends who are guys who are, you know, about like go out and be like, oh, do you want to go shopping for some clothes today? Or do you want to go, or like, you know, start reading? Well, it's hard to say because everybody deals with things differently. But I think, first of all, you need to process who you are and these emotions, because it feels like you're still hanging on to them. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's a very human thing to do, and you shouldn't feel ashamed of that, because there's some feelings that I still have from when I was a teenager and from previous relationships that I still hold within me, and I will probably hold within me till I die. Yeah. And I think everybody does that.
Yeah, and also like you had an engagement when you were in your teen years.
That's intense.
That's really intense. Like it's a really formative time in your life for yourself, and if you're being attached to somebody else to the extent that you're like committed to being married when you're a teenager, like it doesn't surprise me at all that a lot of your own identity is built into that person and built into that relationship. So like you will have like a lot to learn about yourself.
You've got to unpack that. You've got to like literally like build yourself. Yeah. You've got to like smash yourself down into bits and like rebuild yourself, which is hard and painful.
But also exciting.
It's so exciting. That's the best bit. Like, it's rewarding.
Because you can also work out like what you want and who you are and like what you're all about. And like everyone struggles with feeling ugly. Like I know that seems like a really glib thing to say, but I've never met anyone who's just consistently been like, fuck, I'm hot.
I'm like, so hot.
Every day. Yeah. I think as long as there will be other people in the world, you'll be jealous of other people, and you'll feel like you don't look as good as them in whatever way. And
also it's like, sorry to interrupt.
No,
I was going to say, it depends on how you broke up as well. Yeah. Why was the engagement called off? Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, we don't know too much about this, so we can't comment on that. But there could be a multitude of reasons why this engagement broke up, which could have been, you know, either side could have caused that engagement to break up. And I don't want to assume anything or claim anything about anybody or anything like that. But if an engagement breaks down, that's something that you have to, like, reconsider. Why did it break down? What were the causes? was there any part in it that you played? And if so, how do you work on and not repeat that same mistake?
Yeah.
You know, but also like if you were the one who was, even if you weren't the one at fault for the engagement breaking off, you can still be hurt and still have things to learn about yourself.
Yeah.
And that's really important.
And I think you'll enjoy it.
Of course, totally. Oh my God, when you break up with someone and it's sad and it's hard,
it's awful.
It's awful. Oh my God, tell me about it. Jesus Christ. Oh my God. Oh, it's so awful, and you feel so rubbish, and you feel so bad about yourself, and you compare yourself, and especially if the person then moves on really quickly and you don't.
Yeah.
That's really hard.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's that Hegelian thought, isn't it? Is it Hegel who said, if you marry, you will regret it. If you don't marry, you will regret it.
Yeah.
Try to do things that you won't regret. And also, like, I read something the other day, which, like, is not really, it's related more to capitalism, but it's really fun. And I really like the quote. And it's like, if you're worried about not doing enough, you are an apex predator.
Yeah.
You are designed to lounge around, do things that you enjoy, and do a bit of work now and again for food. And I guess what I'm trying to say with that is that take the time to do the things in life that you enjoy, because through those things you will find a really strong sense of identity and sense of boundaries and who you really are. And then
you'll meet people.
And when you meet those people and you have those things about you that you have structured and built up and flourished into, blossomed into, they're going to love you for that.
Yeah.
And that's what they're going to really appreciate you for. And not only do they need to love you, but you need to love yourself for those same reasons.
Yeah.
That's really important. I think more... Is that good?
That's such nice advice.
Cool. Perfect.
I think this person have a lovely time.
Yes. Just have a lovely time.
Yeah.
And one day someone will come and go, let's have a lovely time together.
Yeah, just be kind as well.
Totally. Be
And
kind.
to
Very
yourself.
important. Be kind to everybody.
Yeah, and I don't know, I don't think the jealousy you feel about other people needs to translate into you being horrible or you being broken.
You can feel jealous, but you need to find ways to translate that into positive things.
Yeah, and if you're worried about the way you look, and if you're worried about, like, in the most, like, incelish ways, like, if you're worried about someone being, like, bigger than you physically and, like, more muscular or whatever, there are ways to get more muscular that aren't grueling, and there are ways to just become, like, marginally happier with your body.
Of course.
In ways that are fulfilling.
I just really like the fact, so I was just rereading the question then to recalibrate. The fact that you said that you agree about the incels means that you're not an incel.
Yeah, you're not an incel.
That is, I think that's really important to say as well, is that it's very easy to feel like you subscribe to a very negative identity or a negative kind of group of people. But if you acknowledge the fact that, if you agree with those things fundamentally, and you're not agreeing just to say that you agree, then I think that you're different from them. Yeah,
and I think it's good to be worried about seeming like one.
Yeah, that's like a human thing. That is fine. You are a good person because of that. If not everything else, just because you recognise that you are not one of those and don't want to be one of those, that makes you a good person and you are deserving of love.
You are deserving of love. You seem really nice.
Yeah, you seem lush.
And then we can go on to our final question.
Oh my God, yes.
Which is, is the fact that his favourite movie is Fight Club a deal breaker?
Okay, yes. Yes. Also, addendum, who's their favourite character? They like Helena Bonham Carter for their character, great. If they like Helena Bonham Carter because they're a manic pixie dream girl, no good. If they love Brad Pitt and the other guy, what's the other guy's name?
Edward Norton.
If they... Okay. I've watched Fight Club. Good movie. It's not my favourite film. And it's related very much to what we were talking about today. Okay. No. Just no. I'm just going to say Nagadoo, which is no in Welsh. So, Nagadoo, boys. No. Yeah.
I think this is a dark sign.
This is a red.
This is a really red flag.
Okay, another question I'm going to ask is, are they going to appear on Beam Me Up Soft Boy? Because if they're like, and also, okay, I had a conversation the other day about lefty guys, and I was just like, yeah, some of them are really bad, and they mask it very well.
Yeah.
Oh God. This is like a minefield, this question.
I think it's as funny as well because Fight Club was supposed to be a satire, but it's just not been received as a satire at all.
No.
And I think like the film actually isn't very good at translating it satirically.
It's like American Psycho.
Yeah.
American Psycho. If you've ever read American Psycho.
Yeah, I
really love that book. And I love the fact that like when you like someone explained about the book the other day and was like, the point is that it's on a podcast and they were like just saying about like how the fact that the book, when every character appears, he literally talks for a paragraph about whatever he's wearing. And it's the point that his life is so banal and like boring.
And totally superficial. That all these things that he's doing, like he has no happiness. Yeah. And that's the point. But in American Psycho, the film, Christian Bale is like charming and like and
attractive. Yeah, but it's really interesting that it was a female director.
But I also find so many bits of that film really funny, like the whole bit
it's very comedic. Yeah, it's very comedic.
Him watching himself have sex in the mirror.
Yeah, he's like playing it.
The bit with the business cards.
The business cards is so good. That's such a good scene.
In such funny ways. But then it seems like Wolf of Wall Street as well. People have just watched it and been like, I want to be Jordan Belfort instead of thinking like this man is revolting.
Well, I was reading some stuff and there's like a watch brand that actually marketed its watches as stuff that Patrick Bateman would wear.
That's insane.
Which is really twisted.
That's insane. Yeah. That is psychopathic.
Yeah, and it's like Patrick Bateman, like there's loads of websites and like articles that are like, this is how to get the Patrick Bateman look and blah 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 blah. And it's because of the Christian Bale yuppie culture. There's still like another great indictment of yuppie culture. Vampire's Kiss with Nicolas Cage.
I've not seen that. Oh my
god! Have you seen the Nicolas Cage like the video snippet, which is like A B C D E F?
Oh my god!
That's from that movie.
Right.
I'm not going to spoil loads of the plot, but basically he is bitten by a vampire and he thinks he's a vampire. That is the plot. Okay. There's a scene where he's walking down the road and he's literally going, I'm a vampire! I'm a vampire! I'm a vampire! If you can splice it in, that video, please do, because it's so good. Like he is in the club with like fake fangs on, and he's like, so good. He's like a yuppie in that film. And the point is that he is literally insane. Like, he terrorizes his secretary. Like, obviously, because it's Nicolas Cage. Like, you're like, ha, 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 lol.
But if that was Patrick Bateman, maybe it would be like a really hot...
It would be hot. It would be hot. Yeah. And there's, like, two sides to the coin there. It's really
interesting. You need a kind of goofy-looking Nicolas Cage type.
Just love Nicolas Cage.
Carry that off me too.
Yeah, it's so good. He's like one of my favourite actors.
Yeah. Have you seen Moonstruck?
Yes.
I love Moonstruck.
They took my head! They took my life! To the bed! You watched Mandy?
Yes.
My God.
My flatmate and I went to see Mandy at the CCA and we were like very intoxicated.
Right. I watched it only recently for the first time ever and I was like, oh my God. But like that scene where he's like, that's my favourite Jack! You read my favourite Jack! Oh my God, that movie is so good. So good.
But yeah, don't go out with this guy.
Yeah, like this. That was a very short question. And do you know what it is? It was a very short answer. No.
But what are your recommendations for getting over a breakup? Like, what are your top films or books?
Oh my God. Okay. So, right. I really like. Oh my God. Okay, so the two books that I read after that have really helped me out with breakups was Essays on Love by Alain de Botton. And I read that after one of my big breakups and couldn't finish it. It's what 500 Days of Summer is based on. 500 Days of Summer, hot take, bad film. Anyway, it's what 500 Days of Summer is based on, and it's very like, it's like a guy and he falls in love with someone and then she like runs off with his best mate and he's like, oh, and he tries to kill himself on Christmas Day, but it's like very funny, like he takes like vitamin C capsules. It's hilarious. It's like, and he's just being sick on Christmas Day. Like, it's really stupid, but it's like very beautiful. And basically, it's like the book is about him falling in love and then falling out of love, and it's like beautifully written, and that really helped me out.
Yeah, I think the Botton's a great writer.
Of course, and then at the very end, he finds someone else. Yeah, and it's like beautiful, right? And another one I read was called Of Human Bondage, which.
Whoa.
Right, we read that book.
Yeah, I read that.
Yeah, yes. So that book helped me get over my last breakup. Because of the end. Because that whole book is like a misery fest.
It really is. I read it when I was a teenager.
It took me years to finish. I couldn't finish it for years, and then I finally finished it when my mates were around having drinks in the kitchen, and I was reading, and they were like, "Come out and hang out," and I was like, "I've got to finish this book," because at the end it's so happy. And I think anything that has a happy ending through strife. I mean. Of Human Bondage is about like a lot of strife.
It's a big book.
It's like 600 pages. It's a good book though, I recommend it. I mean, And then I'm trying to think I listen to a lot of sad music, so I think that I really like Sarah Clan. Sarah Clan's really good. I do listen to I think Iron and Wine's what's that first album? Every 1,000 Days or something. You know Iron and Wine?
No.
Oh my god, Iron and Wine. Iron and Wine. It's like just 1 second. I'm gonna find it on Spotify really quickly because I can never remember what the album is called, and it's like one of my favorite albums. Which it doesn't mean that it's one of my favorite albums, but you know what I mean. Iron and this album, not Iron Maiden. Sorry, this is very like terrible of me. Iron and Wine, and then it's called Our Endless Numbered Days. It's his first album he released, and it's just like it's kind of like folk music, but it's very nice. It's all about him like there's one called Solemn South Georgia about his like dad dying, and like each coming like Naked As We Came, he talks about like dying with his wife that he loves. It's like very beautiful, very very beautiful. And then have you ever okay, this is also like a bit of a weird recommendation, but did actually really help me because it allowed me to cry, which I needed to do. Have you ever heard A Crow Looked at Me by Mount Eerie?
No.
Okay, so Mount Eerie is like a guy, and he writes like really weird like spoken word over very minimal like acoustic guitar, and he was with his wife Genevieve, and they were together for a few years, and then they had a baby, and she died, like very tragically of cancer, and he wrote an album as soon as she died, and it's called A Crow Looked at Me, and it is like I've read reviews to try and like translate my feelings into it, but I can't translate the emotions. Now this is an incredibly heavy album, and I recommend it to people if they feel like they're up for it, but I finished it and I just cried for like an hour, because it is the most realistic representation of death that I've ever listened to.
Wow.
And I listened to it after my granddad died, and I listened to it after I had a breakup, and it is one of the most stunning albums of all time, but it's not stunning in the sense of like beautifully like recorded, or like it's just raw, and I can't explain it in any other way, but that really helped me. I don't know what it was about it, but something about that album really helped me in some dark times in my life.
Aww.
But it is incredibly dark. It's like sitting in a swamp. Do you know what I mean? Like the feeling is like sitting in like a bath. Feeling is like sitting in a bathtub late at night. Another good album. Have a Nice Life, Death Consciousness. Great album. Great album about death, but also very macabre and sad. But a wonderful album.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming on and
worries.
speaking to me about
My pleasure. I had a great time. Sorry I got very heavy at times.
No, not at all.
And also at the end I was like, yeah, read all these heavy books and listen to these heavy albums. But I think that when you're in an emotion, it's really important to recognise that. And sometimes, especially when we're talking about as men, you need to really push yourself into a position where the floodgates literally open. And I think putting yourself in positions, only if you're comfortable with it, in which you can really process and tap into something deeper and emotional about yourself is really important. So it's been great.
Great. Is there anything you'd like to plug?
Oh, you can follow me on Instagram if you want. Eden Dodd, all has me. I've also got the physical showcase for the MLIT course coming up, Fine Art Practice, in Glasgow School of Art. I think that's coming up in August. I believe it opens on the 15th of August for a week in the Stow College over in Cowcaddens in Glasgow. Besides that, I've got some things that are coming up, but I can't talk about them.
Okay, that's exciting.
Yeah.
So follow Eden for updates on that.
Yes, please do. I can't talk about them. Yeah, so.
And you can follow 16 Nicholson Street Gallery if you want
Please
to look
do.
at what I'm doing as a curator and the director of an art space in Glasgow, and follow our programme and everything. But otherwise, you can follow me at Breaking Up Podcast on Instagram, or you can email breakinguppodcast@gmail.com if you have any agony aunt questions, if you have any recommendations for breakup content, or if you'd like to sponsor the podcast.
Oh, yes, that's what we like.
Yes. But thanks so much. See you soon.
Thank you very much.
Bye.